on the cloud. Here you are.
Great. So let's start then. So hi everyone, my name is Rémi Desmartins. I'm an MSc student at Heriot-Watt. I'm doing my dissertation under the supervision of Katia and with additional guidance by Matthew Daggett and Daniel Kinitz. And so today I will talk to you about what I've been doing for the past couple of months, which is neural network verification with a tool called Imandra. Oh. So a couple of months ago, I first learned in detail about neural networks in multiple courses, including Katia's course. I had very few experience with neural networks. I had a couple of tutorials done with TensorFlow, but for me, neural network was still this big magical thing that is being hyped everywhere in programming, at least. I come from a very practical programming background, and so I was kind of shocked, or at least surprised, to learn that even though they're so hyped and deployed everywhere in safety critical applications, in self-driving cars, in aircraft collision detection systems, we actually don't know everything that happens inside a neural network, or more accurately, we can't explain all the decisions that are made by neural networks. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. And this led to me being interested in neural network verification and understanding why we do need verification. So as I said, neural networks are being deployed in very safety critical applications. So it's essential that we are able to prove that they will not do some type of critical errors. So I'm assuming, since we're at the AI verification lab seminar, that we're all familiar with neural network. And so for verification tools, they're a class of tool of software tools that prove software properties mathematically. So by creating a mathematical representation of pieces of software, this is a general case for software other than neural networks as well. And it proves there are some properties of the software for all possible inputs. So compared to unit tests, for instance, where we have to give specific inputs, with a verification tool, it proves a network's property for all possible inputs. So a very high level way of how a neural network verification tool works is that we input in it a neural network and a property that we want to prove. And through analysis, the verification tool will either validate or prove or disprove this property. So after this short introduction, now I'm going to ask 4 questions and try my best to answer them. So first is what tools exist right now for neural network verification. Then I will go to what is Imandra, what can it do, and finally, how can we use it for neural network verification. And to answer this question, I will take a quite practical approach, especially for the last ones, by giving you a short demonstration of Imandra and a short program application for neural network verification. So let's start with the existing tools that I encountered in the past couple of months in the start of my research. So there are 2 main types of neural network verification tool that I encountered, which are SMT solver-based verification tools and abstraction-based verification tools. So let's start with SMT solver-based. So SMT solvers in SMT stands for satisfiability modulo theory, and so an SMT solver is piece of software that relies on the satisfiability modulo theory in order to we give it constraints or predicates, which are Boolean expressions. And it tries to assign values to the different terms of this predicate in order to satisfy it, so to make it evaluate to true, as it's a Boolean expression. So within these SMT solvers, we can distinguish general purpose SMT solvers and specific purpose SMT solvers, which have been specifically designed for neural network verification. So in the first category, with the general purpose SMT solvers based the verification tools, so they embed a general purpose SMT solver. So an SMT solver that was designed not specifically for neural network verification, such as Z3 that was developed by Microsoft. And so it embeds this general purpose SMT solver with a programming language. And in this programming language, we will be able to represent a neural network and then evaluate the neural network's property thanks to the general purpose SMT solver. So I put a few examples which were published by Katia and Wen Koch, such as Sapphire, which embeds Z3 in Python, Starchild, which uses F-star, and Lazuli in Liquid Haskell. So the last two are functional languages, and it's so these functional languages present high-level features that prove useful for neural network verification. Then for specific SMT solvers, specific SMT solvers based verification tools, we have Marabou, which was developed by Guy Katz and others. So for this one, the SMT solver was specifically designed for this tool and specifically designed with neural networks in mind. And so they embed the more general Z3 SMT solver that I just talked about, but it adds to it, it's richer. For instance, it does real number solving compared to Z3, which only deals with integers. And so the fact that the SMT solvers were specifically designed for neural network verification allows for more flexibility and for more performance when verifying neural networks properties. Then the second category of verification tools are abstraction-based verification tools. So we'll go over those more quickly. A few examples published in the past years include ReLuval or NeurIFI, which is based on the previous paper presenting ReLuval. And then we also have ERAN and NNV. And so what these abstraction-based tools do is represent neural networks as an approximation in order to prove their properties. If we compare the two different categories that I just distinguished, SMT-based verification tools are complete, so they do not output false positives when we ask for a verification property, which make them very reliable. So they always prove or disprove a property reliably. But the drawback is that they're computationally intensive. SMT solvers are quite computationally intensive, which makes it difficult for to scale for larger neural networks with thousands of properties or tens of thousands of parameters. On the other hand, abstraction-based verification tools are incomplete, so they can output false positive results. Also, they express, or at least the ones that I just presented, they express the verification or the certifications in the form of bounds that the output of the neural network can have. And sometimes these bounds are too wide, and so this makes the results inconclusive. We cannot say that the results of a neural network will be within small enough range or a set. So this makes the result inconclusive. But on the other hand, since they do an approximation of the neural network, they are more scalable and they perform better on scalability level. So after having presented these different verification tools, let us ask ourselves now, what is Emendra? And so first, where does it belong in the distinction that I made in verification tools? So Emendra is definitely SMT, belongs to the SMT solver-based category. It has a general purpose logic engine, but this engine was specifically designed for Emendra and its programming language, Emendra ML, which I will talk more about in a moment. So it's kind of in between the two SMT-based classes or categories that I just presented. So its logic engine can perform varied operations and is not specifically designed for neural network verification, but it was specifically designed for integration with its own programming language. So it still has the flexibility and performance that specific SMT solver-based verification tools can have. So in terms of what it is, so as I just explained, Emendra is a reasoning engine or a logic engine, which is called Emendra Core, and it has its own programming language called Emendra ML or IML, which I will talk about in more detail in a few moments. So Emendra Core is a logic engine. It has a lot of capabilities. Some of them, I must admit, I do not understand fully. But the most important for us today is that it has theorem proving and theorem definition capabilities. It can do induction, it can prove program termination, and it can also do region decomposition. So it has all the capabilities of a SMT solver with real number reasoning. And all this is done with also functional language capabilities. So it supports theorem proving with recursion, for instance, and higher order function reasoning, which I will show in a few moments. On a more practical side, Emendra Core is it exposes an interface, so we communicate with it through the programming language IML. So it exposes a set of functions that we can call in IML, and it presents itself as an executable with a command line interface, so we can interact with it on in a terminal. It can also convert IML file into OCaml file in order to integrate them with an already existing piece of software. So using the Emendra extract tool. And so it will convert our IML into OCaml file. And finally, it also has a Jupyter kernel, which is what I'm going to use today. And it's also interesting to note that they propose online Jupyter instance, so a bit like Google Collaboratory. So if you want, I can share with you the notebooks that I'm using today, and you can try them out for yourselves without having a local installation, just on the online instance of the Emendra Jupyter kernel. So now that we presented Emendra Core, let's talk about IML. So IML is a subset of OCaml. So it uses the same syntax, the same everything as OCaml, but with a limited set of types and operations available. All the types and operations available are specific, the ones that are supported by the logic engine. And so in order to make Emendra ML code work with its engine, so it defines its own arithmetic types, elementary arithmetic type like integers, floating point numbers, and also elementary operations, so addition, subtractions for both integers and floating point numbers. these custom types are specifically made for reasoning and theorem solving and proving. So in order to demonstrate Emendra-ML features more practically, I will do a short demonstration first of Emendra-ML and OCaml, and then I will go to the question, how can it, what can Emendra-ML do, and show its capabilities on a shallow neural network verification example. So let me switch to my browser. So the aim of this notebook, it's not to make you experts at AML or be able to even write a program in AML from start to finish, but more give you a very quick overview and introduction, so that my example of neural network verification will be more understandable and more useful for you. Also, a lot of these features that I'm going to show right now, they're common to IML and OCaml, so I might use the two terms interchangeably. So if I say that a property is true in OCaml, then it's also true in IML. So as I said, Emendra-ML is a subset of OCaml. It's a pure functional subset of OCaml. And so as OCaml, it has a very strong static typing. So we can see, and so it has separate arithmetic operators for integers and real number. There's no implicit conversion as is done in other programming language like C or Python. So we cannot add a float and an integer together. And they have a specific operator. So here, for instance, if I want to add two floats together, I have to use the plus dot operator, which is the addition for floating point numbers or real numbers. And it has a type inference system. So we can see that here in these two variable assignment operations, we don't say explicitly which type of variable it is, but IML will deduce the type of the variables. So the A being an integer and the B being a real number. So function definition, the syntax can be off-putting for those who are not familiar with functional programming, and even I, having some experience with functional programming in Haskell, it was sometimes weird for me to adapt to the OCaml syntax. So I will go over function definition quite quickly. So as I said, IML is a functional language, so it can be thought, this paradigm can be thought as everything is a function. And in practice, almost all function return a variable by default. So there's no need for a return keyword. So here we can see in the definition of the ReLU function, we don't have a return keyword. We just check, so if x is less than 0, then we return 0, but no need for a return keyword. What's interesting to note as well is that there is no parenthesis around function parameters like in most other programming language. And this is also true for when we call or when we apply a function. So here, when we want to call the function ReLU with the parameter 3, we just call ReLU3 without parentheses. Parentheses can still be used to separate expressions or to express tuples, as we will see later, but not for function calling or function definition. It's also interesting to note that the type that is derived by Emendra of a function is of type T arrow T. So this arrow sign means the return type of the function is of type T. So it takes, and T means that it's the same type that is taken as input and as output. So we can also do custom type definition. In this way, we can name the different members of a type. So here we create a tuple with two floats inside with a first and second members, and this will allow us to access more legibly and more easily the elements of the tuple. So if we want to get the first element of this tuple that we just defined here, we can call x.fst, and it will return to us the first element of our tuple. So now let's talk about an important element of functional programming, or especially OCaml, which is function carrying and partial application. So for this, let us consider an example, a very simple perceptron with only one input. So it takes as parameter an activation function, weight, bias, and an input. So we declare our function. Here we do an intermediary variable declaration. Here it's interesting to note the let in syntax. So this is the syntax for all statements that are done within a function before a return statement. So this is a quite characteristic of OCaml. It can be thought the in as the semicolon at the end of line of code in C, for instance. But so we do the weighted sum, then we apply the activation function that we passed as parameter to the result. And since this is the last statement of this function, it constitutes the return statement. Now Imendra so deduces the type of this function. And so there are two things of interest to note here. So first, the type of the function it takes as a parameter, which is t arrow a. So within the function, it takes a function as a parameter. And so when we call this function of perceptron, so we can pass it a function that we defined earlier. So the ReLU function, for instance, that we defined previously. And so if we pass it these arguments, so the weighted sum will be negative, and so the activation with the ReLU will be 0 indeed. Or we can also pass it an anonymous function with the fun keyword. So fun with the arrow, it makes an anonymous function. And here we just redefine the ReLU function as an anonymous function. So this is also a OCaml syntax for anonymous function definition. And we can see that the result is still 0. Now, the other thing to note in this function type is that the arrow sign is used both between the parameters of the function and between the parameters and the return type. So this is because of function currying. This means that this function can be partially applied and it will return a new applicable function. So if we apply the perceptron function to only parts of its parameters, so here we only apply it to an activation function, and we store it in a new, we store the result in a new variable. This new variable will have the same last types as the initial function, the perceptron function. And so what it will do is, so this f function, this variable f, will be a function that only takes the last 3 parameters of the perceptron function, the weight, bias, and input, and return the output with the ReLU activation function. So it can be thought of as the same as the perceptron function with a default first parameter or a fixed first parameter. And indeed, if we try it with a positive and negative ReLU argument, we find the correct results. So 0 for the negative and the input number for the positive. So that was the very quick introduction to IML. Do you have any question at this point? Anything that I should go on again?
Just wanted
If not,
to say, Remy, very
yep.
clear, very nice introduction. It was very clear, nicely done.
Okay,
Question,
thank you.
just let's give a second to everyone
Yep.
to respond with a question. Your chance. Sure. Okay, that's silence, but it was really well done, Remy. Well done, really just pleasant thing to see.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. So with that done, let us go through the Emendra API itself. So here I will give very brief examples of two important functions of the Emendra API, which are instance and verify, and we will see them in further detail with the neural network example. So the instance function takes a predicate as an input, and it tries to find variables that satisfy this predicate. So the predicate is a function that returns a Boolean value. Sorry. So here, for instance, we have we define an anonymous function. So what this means is we ask Emendra, is there a variable x that exists that verifies that ReLU of x is equal to 100. Here it's important to note that the equal sign, even though it's a single equal, it is a comparison operator. It's not an assignment operator. So we pass this predicate to the instance function, and Emendra reasons about it. It replies to us that an instance does indeed exist, and it gives us the value. So for instance, if x equals 100, of course, ReLU of x will be equal to 100. It gives us more details on the operations that it made. So here the co-graph and the proof are not terrifically interesting, since this was a quite easy problem, but we can see that it gives us details on performance, the number of statements that it executed, memory usage for the execution. We have this information in multiple different formats as a graph as well. So we can verify Emendra's proof if we want to. Then on the if Emendra does not find a variable that satisfies the predicate, so here we ask Emendra, does a variable exist x where ReLU of x is less than 0? Obviously, since ReLU is positive, it's unsatisfiable. And so once again, it gives us all the details and the details of the proof and of the operation. So then the verify function takes up as a parameter a function that represents a property that we want to prove, and it attempts to prove it. If it is not proven, it will give us a counterexample for this function. So here, if we analyze the function that we pass to the verify function, so once again, it's an anonymous function, and we're asking Emendra if for any variable x, does the fact that x is less than 0 implies that ReLU of x is less than 5. So this is the imply Boolean operator, which is very useful for the verify function. So does for any x, does the fact that x is less than 0 imply that ReLU of x is less than 5? If we think about it for a second, of course it does, because x, if x is less than 0, then ReLU of x will always be 0, so always less than 5. And indeed, Imandra says that this property is proved. And once again, it gives us detail of the proof as in a graph form as well. So once again, this is very simple, very trivial property to prove. So very simple graph. But on the other hand, if this property is not proven, so here we said we ask Imandra, can we verify that for any variable x less than 10, does that imply that ReLU of x is less than 5? So obviously not, because and Imandra gives us a counterexample. So there are the output is quite raw. So there is some information about the CX model is the counterexample module, and it gives us a counterexample. So it says if x is 5, then ReLU of x will not be less than 5 because it will be equal to 5. So we can see that with the instance function, we can ask Imandra for the existence of an instance for a given predicate. And with the verify function, we can ask Imandra to prove a function. And if the function is not proven, Imandra will give us a counterexample. So with this introduction to the Imandra syntax and the two most important Imandra logic functions, let us go to the neural network example. So are there any questions about Imandra, the Imandra verification functions right now? If not, we will start the verification of a neural network example. So I assume
Sounds good
not.
to me.
Okay, great. So for this example, we will use a very simple neural network. So that was with this architecture. So it has an input layer with 4 inputs. So I trained this neural network on the Iris dataset using Keras. Then I extracted all the weights and I represented this neural network in Imandra in OCaml. So it has, the neural network has a very simple architecture. It has 4 inputs, then only one hidden layer, only one neuron in the hidden layer, and then 3 outputs which were trained, so which represented the 3 different classes with a softmax function in the training. We will see that the softmax function was replaced here with a sort of argmax function, and the activation function for the hidden layer is ReLU. So with this presentation, let's go over the program itself. So first we defined a custom type of inputs for basically for ease of use. So with the name of the different features, the sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width of the data. Yeah, as I said, this was more for legibility. It does not bear an important role in this demonstration. Same for the input processing function. It does not do much. It just extracts the values which are inside the input type and just returns them as a tuple. So just before, when I say that parentheses can be used to define a tuple, here is an example. So this will be a tuple of 4 real numbers. Here you can also note the let in syntax, as I said before. Once again, I'm probably going to go quick over some of the cells or some of the parts of this example, but I can always share this notebook, and you can run it on your own on Imendra's online Jupyter kernel. So then I defined the layer for this neural network. So the first layer, the hidden layer, takes as a parameter the activation function, tuple with the weights, and tuple with the inputs, and it applies the activation function on the weighted sum of the weights and inputs. For the second layer, for the output layer, I hard-coded the weights in the function. We will see in a moment why for the first function, the weights activation are parameterized, and for the second layer, it's hard-coded. But yeah, here are the two weight layer functions. Then we define an output function, which will take the tuple of 3 real numbers, which is outputted by the last layer. And so basically what it does is an argmax. And so depending on the maximum value of the first, second, or third term of the tuple, it will output a string corresponding to the classification results. So Setosa, versicolor, or Virginica. So now that we defined the input layer and output function, we will chain them together. So for that, we use the chaining operator. It behaves a bit like the pipe operator in Bash shell programming. So what it does is take the output of the first function and give it as input to the next function. And so we see, so the first model function that we define, it takes as parameters the activation function and the weights for the first layer and the inputs, and it will output the class which is predicted for the given input. So it's parameterized over activation and weights, even though for most of the examples, we're going to use the same weights and activation. So ReLU and the weights that were computed in the neural network training process. So once again, we'll see in a moment why this is interesting to parameterize these two parameters. But so for ease of use, we will also define a version of the model that is that just uses the default weights and activation function. So for that, we define the ReLU function, we define the weights tuple, and so this is an example of a partial function application. And so we will use the ReLU, the model ReLU function to represent the model that we will execute for most of the following examples. So now that we defined our complete model, let's test it on an instance. So we define an instance that was taken from our normalized testing set. We pass it as a parameter to the function, and indeed it classifies it as a versicolor instance, which was the instance which it belonged to, which is the class which it belonged to in the testing set. So now that we have our model representation, let's use the two functions that we just talked about, the reasoning functions from Imandra. So instance, we can ask, so to test a little bit, can we, is there an input for this neural network that exists for which the model will classify it as a foo? Obviously not, since it can only classify it as the 3 different iris types. So obviously Imandra is going to say that it's unsatisfiable. On the other hand, if we prove that an instance, if we ask Imandra to prove that an instance exists that will be classified by our model as Virginica, it will so say that an instance exists, and it will give us a result. But so here we see that the result, the values are quite out of proportion for our data set, since it's normalized, so it has zero mean and unit variance. So having 8,800 and something as a value is quite uninteresting. So we can add additional constraints. We can compose with constraints with the AND operator. So here we defined the isValid input function. We pass it an input and we check if all the members of this input are between -3 and 3 in order to have for Emendra to give us instances that are closer to what's actually in our normalized data set. And indeed, once we ask the same question, so does an instance exist that will be classified as versicolor, Emendra will give us a more interesting results that is more in line with our dataset values. So with 0, -1, 0, 0. And here is the reason why it was interesting to parameterize the activation function and the weights in our first definition of the model, because Emendra can reason about these as well. So here we define a new predicate function. And what this function does is ask Emendra, is there an activation function that exists that will make our model classify the given input that we know is versicolor as versicolor? And Emendra gives us an answer. So admittedly, this answer is not the most exciting thing, because it just gives us a constant function that just returns always the same real number represented by this fraction. So admittedly, this is not the most exciting results, but it's still, I think it's a good example of how Emendra can reason about function, and so reason on higher order objects, like the model objects, which takes a function, and then it can reason about the function that is taken as a parameter. And in the same way, we can ask Emendra to reason about the weights, which is also interesting. So then the verify function. So here it's interesting. So here it will be interesting because we will be able to prove or disprove properties of our neural network. And so, for instance, admittedly, the iris classification problem is not the most safety critical problem. Maybe it would have been more telling with a aircraft collision detection dataset or something similar, but we can still verify some properties of our dataset. So here, for instance, by plotting the dataset, we can see that all the instances of irises with petal length that is less than 2.5 belong to the Setosa class. Yeah, the Setosa class. So we can ask Emendra if this observed property holds true for our model. So once again, we define an anonymous function which represent the constraint that we want to check. What we ask here is, does the petal length of our input is less than 2.5 with the normalization transformation imply that our model will classify this instance as a Setosa? And here we find out actually that it's not the case. So our model doesn't translate this observed property. It doesn't have this property. And Emendra gives us a counter example, which we see here. Not in the most easily readable format, but it's still an answer. Final feature that I want to show that Emendra does is regions visualization. So I will go over this quickly, but basically we have to redefine the neural network because the region visualization doesn't work with higher order objects. But so what it does is divide the input space into regions which with specific constraints. The regions represent objects that will be classified as the same. So if we click on here, so we can see that if an input satisfies all these constraints, then it will be classified as setosa. So that's an interesting way to visualize the problem that our neural network tries to solve and how it solves it. So are there any questions about this demonstration? If not, I will.
Remy, we're slightly out of
run
time.
again.
I would have
Okay.
liked to understand better the region decomposition and what it
Okay.
really says, that graph, but maybe I'll ask you at the supervisory meeting then.
Sure.
And
Sure.
please share these with the team. I'm sure
Yep.
several people will be happy to play with this.
Yes, I will. So if we're short on time, then I will wrap up quickly. So in summary, Emendra is both a programming language and a logic engine, which are both closely integrated together. So it's quite easy and fast to make verification on neural networks defined or represented in IML. It has the ability to reason on higher order objects, which is quite interesting. And one limitation that it has is a limitation that is encountered by all SMT solver-based verification tool, is that it can only reason on locally linear functions. So for instance, it does not support the sigmoid activation function or the other non-locally linear functions. And so the last question that I will answer quickly is how can we use it? So what my plans are for using it in my dissertation projects. So assuming that we can represent convolutional neural network with Emendra. So the first step will be to represent convolutional neural networks, and then I will try to find elements of answer to the question, how can we use the higher order reasoning capabilities of Emendra to extract and to prove interesting properties on convolutional neural networks. So that's it from my presentation. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.
Thanks, Remy. This is fantastic talk for someone who's just learned about verification and the Mandra and SMT solvers. It's just amazing. I will switch off recording to encourage people to talk freely and ask questions, and then we will just go with it. So let me do that. So
Sure.
that's recording.